Last time on Dragon Ball Z.
A couple of the big YouTubers have made their weapon tier lists. Yeah, sure, I'll check it out. How bad can it be?
PDW, this is S tier. This is S tier.
Okay, so I'm looking at my channel page right now. I've noticed that we have this nice little blue and red pattern here because I've been alternating between the two series and most of my videos are generally quite positive. You know what? Let's ruin it. I mean, if you squint hard enough, purple isn't that far from blue now, isn't it? SMGs are some of the most diverse weapons in Call of Duty Mobile, ranging from weapons that fully dedicate themselves to close quarters, all the way to bordering on assault rifle territory. The latter is quite interesting due to how tricky they are to balance. It is very easy to end up with a weapon that inherits the strengths of both weapon categories without any of their weaknesses. Some of the best SMGs in Call of Duty Mobile's history are examples of this. One SMG in particular just so happens to fit into this category, the PDW-57. This SMG has been gaining quite a bit of hype, mainly thanks to a certain YouTuber claiming that it is easily a top tier option on par with the USS-9 and VMP, when that isn't exactly the case. So welcome to a brand new series, where we take a look at some of Call of Duty Mobile's weapons that receive just a little too much praise, even if they are pretty good. And we're kickstarting this series by talking about the problem with the PDW-57. Now, it would be pretty disingenuous if all I said was that the PDW is bad, because it's not. So let's begin by talking about what makes a PDW good. First things first, its 4-tap range is pretty impressive for an SMG. If you can hit at least 2 upper body shots, which is not difficult to achieve, its 4-tap range extends up to 26.1 meters, which is only slightly shorter than the XM4's. And speaking of which, the PDW just so happens to feature the exact same time to kill as the XM4 at 240 milliseconds, which is decently competitive. This time to kill is also identical to guns like the Type 19, Base Manowar, Bruin Mark 9, Chopper, S36, Base AGR 556, and QQ9 10mm, assuming you don't 3-tap. Huh. There are actually a lot of weapons with this exact time to kill. We can talk about that later. The PDW's VSA is not bad either. Obviously it's not on the level of assault rifle since it's an SMG, but it is more than enough to allow you to make use of its entire 4-tap range. Recoil is quite low with a pretty simple pattern. The first 15 shots will kick upwards into the left before switching to the right, so when you combine this with its solid range profile, the PDW's effective range is quite a bit further than most SMGs. Not all of them, but we can talk about that later. The biggest upside of the PDW is actually its mobility. It features a very fast sprint speed at 6.62 meters per second, which is actually faster than even some of the more aggressive SMGs. This allows you to get around the map very quickly without having to switch to your secondary. It also has a phenomenal ADS movement speed at 4.43 meters per second, meaning that you can quickly jiggle peek around corners and be a difficult target to hit in spray battles. But we can talk about that later. Actually, how many times have I said that so far? We can talk about that later. But we can talk about that later. We can talk about that later. Okay, so now it's later. This will be the turning point of the video, as I'll be discussing why the PDW absolutely does not belong in the same tier as the USS-9 and VMP. So let's start by talking about the time to kill. Now, I did mention that the time to kill in the initial drop-off is pretty competitive, but what I didn't mention up till this point is what happens after 26 meters. That's because the PDW has some harsh damage drop-off. Right after its 4-tap range, it goes straight down to a 6-shot kill, resulting in a very slow time to kill. It might sound strange to consider time to kill at this range for an SMG, but I'm bringing this up right now because it narrows down what kind of weapons it can compete with. The PDW's range indicates that it's more in line with the aggressive flex weapons like the VMP and QXR, more versatile than aggressive SMGs, but with less effective range than conventional flex weapons. So let us compare the PDW's time to kill with the QXRs and VMPs. Notice anything peculiar here? That's right, the PDW has a much slower time to kill up close, so not only does it lack the time to kill at mid to long range, but also the time to kill for closer ranges. It becomes a lot funnier when you realize that both the VMP and QXR also beat it at range. Oh, and not only that, the more conventional flex weapons such as the DRH and USS-9 have better close range time to kill, than the flex weapon meant for closer ranges, so in terms of overall time to kill, you can see that the PDW doesn't quite hold up against the other flex weapons. And like, yeah sure, it does have pretty decent BSA and recoil, but when the VMP and QXR can handle the same ranges just fine, while having better overall time to kill, yeah, that sounds pretty redundant now, doesn't it? Well, how about that ADS movement speed? Surely, that should make it a top tier option, right? Well, this is the part where we have to discuss about what makes a weapon meta. Take a look at all of the flex weapons that are currently meta. There is a reason none of them have a strafe speed above 4 meters per second, and that is because this level of strafe speed is not necessary. These weapons spec into the more important stats such as time to kill, range, recoil, and accuracy. The first two being stats that the PDW had to sacrifice to gain this strafe speed. Remember, strafe speed is a bonus, not a meta-defining stat. The higher the skill of your opponents, the more the value of high strafe speed depreciates. Highly skilled opponents will more than likely have the mechanical skill to track fast-moving targets, and because of how fast CODM's time to kill is, you will likely die before you can get any good strafe in. If anything, having too fast of a strafe speed can cause the user to miss more shots. And because the PDW sacrificed its range and time to kill, you end up with an aggressive flex weapon with too slow of a time to kill to compete with its meta counterparts, while not having enough range to make up for that. And I know, some of you are going to bring up the point of the PDW having a base mag size of 50, which saves an attachment slot. This would have been a pretty useful trait on any other weapon, but on the PDW specifically, not so much. That's because the PDW doesn't really have a lot of good attachments. And since the PDW has a pretty slow reload time as a trade-off for the larger base mag, the sleight of hand perk becomes a necessity, which isn't that much different from using a fast mag on other weapons. So at the end of the day, are you really saving an attachment slot? So after that long rant, is the PDW secretly a bad weapon? Absolutely not. Even with what I just said, the PDW still has the advantage of low recoil, decent range for an SMG, good mobility, and a consistent time to kill. All of these combined make it a reliable weapon that is easy to use while being versatile enough for an SMG, hallmarks of a good weapon. But just because it's a good weapon doesn't mean it's meta. The problem I have with this placement here is that it implies that the PDW is just as overtuned as some of these weapons, which cannot be further from the truth. Not to mention that the PDW has to compete with so many other weapons that do its job way better, which unfortunately pushes this weapon down a couple tiers. There's really only one way to build a PDW since it doesn't really have that many good attachments. Start with the monolithic suppressor and MIP extended light barrel for the improved range, YKM light stock for faster strafe speed, granulated grip tape for BSA, and the sleight of hand perk for faster reload times. And that covers everything there is to know about the PDW-57. Despite what I said about the PDW, I actually do enjoy this weapon quite a bit. It's a pretty decent gun that is fun to use because of how smooth and comfortable it feels. In fact, if it wasn't for Ferg's video, I would have actually made an in defense of the PDW at some point. Although it wouldn't make much sense to defend a weapon that is already receiving a lot of praise now, would it? But that's just my experience from using the weapon, so what do you guys think about the PDW-57? Do you still think it's a top tier SMG even after this video, or do you agree that it's just a tiny bit overrated? Be sure to let me know in the comments. And if you found the video helpful, please leave a like and subscribe. But until then, I'll be seeing you in the next one. Bye bye.